Welcome to using curves to create geometry. So in this video we're going to be using curves, and this makes it infinitely editable. Now that basically means because a curve is a vector object, it's not really, it has a beginning point and an end point, but it's an infinitely calculable object in our scene. It also means that our mesh, when we generate it using this method, is infinitely editable too. Now this is only going to apply to certain types of modelling, but it is incredibly powerful. Now we're going to be changing the Bezier handle type as well. We haven't done that before, but that will allow us to create sharp edges in our models and also generate a 3D object by defining these curves. So let's hop over into Blender. Okay, so over in Blender I've opened up a brand new blend file. And I have noticed that for some reason in the past I've saved my brand new Blender file with the 3D cursor nowhere near the center. So I'm just going to sort that out now. I'm going to center the 3D cursor. There we go. And I'm just going to go and save my startup file and go File, New, Reload Startup file. Brilliant. That's been causing me a few headaches recently and I didn't realise what I'd done. Anyway, back to the task at hand. So let's get rid of the cube that's there. So let's delete that. And we're going to need to add two curves to our scene. So first of all, let's add a curve that's a type circle. Over in the outliner, I know it's 1 in radius, but that's fine for this purpose. In the radius, I'm going to call this a path, because that's going to be the path at which our next curve is going to follow. So let's generate our other curve by adding another curve, but just a Bezier curve, and that's going to add it right on top, but that's okay. We're just going to shift that out of the way over here. Excellent. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally rotate it by 90 degrees on the x-axis. So I'm going to rotate by 90 degrees on the x-axis. So constraint to x and 90. And the reason we're doing that will become quite apparent in a moment. In fact, I've moved it along the wrong axis here. I actually just want to move it to one side of the circle. Now I'm going to view everything from the front. So I want to be in perspective view. No, I don't. I want to be in orthographic view and looking at it from the front. So we could see our circles just here and our curve, our outline. So we'll just call that outline now. Of course, you can choose to group these together if you want to. Our curve and our outline are there, and we're going to flip around again to the front view because I've just moved away from it and zoom in a little. I'm going to hide the tool shelf and the properties pane so I can see what's going on. So we're going to introduce a new section now in Blender, and that's the data properties. So we've got all of the options along here in the properties panel, and next to the spanner is what looks like a path really, and that's the data. We hover over it, it says object data. So we're going to hop into that and have a look at some of the options there. Now we're interested in this bevel object. So what we're going to do is select the path and select the bevel object as this curve over here, the outline. So if we select that, well, we've got something straight away. And what we've got is this outline going around our circle. Now, when we're in object mode, it doesn't matter where we put this. We can move it and it doesn't adjust our model over here at all. What's happening? Well, if we go and grab in edit mode and start doing the same thing, it does make a difference. So do bear that in mind when you're editing. Now, because it's following this path around a circle, of course, the distance between the first point and the other point here, if we go beyond that, the model itself will go through itself. So if we go and extrude this point here, you can see it's creating a nice vase-like shape, but what's happening is the geometry is passing through itself, and we don't want that to happen. However, what we can do is drag this other bit as far out as we want without that being a problem. So if we lift this area up here and just do a bit of manipulation on our model, we can make sure that the model itself is not going through itself. So if we move that in, we can now see, because there's a hole in the top, we can definitely see that it's starting to work. Now I'm going to hop back over to front view to see how it's looking. Well, that's rather good. In fact, that's kind of like a lamp, isn't it? You could just imagine the bulb sitting in the top there. That may be useful later on, of course. So, vectors. Now, these can be a bit of a tricky one to see sometimes, but when you make these handles, the bit that you move the direction of your curve around with, when you move those about, they've got different properties. And over in the tool shelf, or when you press the V key, so the area down here is under handles, or when you press the V key, you can actually change the handle type. And vector means you get a straight and flat edge. Now there's not enough detail basically in the curves, so we can see this really working well. But if I now go to here, you see that there's a sharp edge before it curves back round again. We may need a few additional curves to make that a really defined flat edge. So that's really powerful for making no end of things. It now looks like the beginnings of a jet fighter engine or something along those lines. If I make that really pointy, what's it called, a MiG or something along those lines, and pull this handle here, pull it right down, it looks like a MiG 17 or something along those lines, or a Lightning, a British Lightning, yes, definitely. I'm going to pull up an image of one of those now. There you go, guys, one of those Cold War beasts, the interceptors there. Oh, there you go, I've started making the nose cone for one of those. How does that look? Pretty sweet, hey? Anyway, I've got a challenge for you guys. I would like you to create the lamp base. So go ahead now and create the lamp base using curves. Change the handle type to vector where straight edges are required, if you want any straight edges, but there is definitely going to be one, and that's where the lamp base connects to the rest of the lamp. So you're going to have a hole at the top of the base where the rest of the lamp's going to slot into a circular hole there. So make sure that you use vectors around there. Everywhere else can just be curves. Remember to fill in the bottom of the lamp as well, so you're going to have to go across and do some measurements. We're going to be setting the base, as we know, to 1 unit across, so it's only going to be half a blender unit that you're going to be able to work with it. Okay, pause the video now and give that a go. Welcome back. Let's go and create the base of our lamp. So let's get rid of the lightning nose cone there and head over to our animated lamp. Right, so we've got our placeholder here, and I'm going to leave that in our scene for a while, simply because it's going to act as the base size, so I know it's not going too far out. I am going to turn this plane off, so it's not in the way, so if I zoom out I can still see things, and I'm simply going to hide this cone when it's not needed. But first of all, I'm going to add a curve that's a circle, and I'm going to make it a radius of, I don't think it really matters, but I'm going to set it to 0.5, and I'm going to call that the base. I seem to have caps lock on, but that's absolutely fine with me. And now I'm going to create another curve in object mode, of course, that's a Bezier curve, and I'm going to shift it to the side and rotate it. I'm going to do it here, the rotation, on the x-axis by 90 degrees while during the creation, and I'm just going to shift it over to one side so I can see what's going on. It'd have also helped there. Can I undo and get back to it under the operator panel? No. So let's just recreate that really quick. Curve, Bezier, if I can do everything all at once, add a Bezier of a radius of 0.5, I can do that straight away, so I don't have to worry about measurements. And of course, set the rotation on the x-axis by 90. Brilliant. I'm going to shift it over to one side so I can see what's going on. Hop over into orthographic and front view. I'm going to get this Bezier curve here and call it outline. And I'm just going to place my outline under the base itself. So set parent object, that's absolutely fine. So now those two things are linked together, so I've got some control over my hierarchy. I might have to start cleaning up all of that in a bit. Anyway, so let's go into here. Let's go over to the data of it, and we need to make sure we've got the base selected. We're going to set the bevel object to outline. Excellent. We can already see it's too big. So I'm going to go over here to this and simply go into edit mode. Now we're in edit mode, we can have some control over this, and I'm guessing the reason why it's too big is the distance between here and here happens to be one blender unit. So I'm going to move it straight away so I've got the right depth. I'm going to hop out of edit mode and just move it across so there's a bit more space round to the front. In fact, what we could do with here is splitting our windows. So I'm going to split my window and hide the tool shelf, hide these properties over here. We're not going to hide them, I'm just going to push them as far away. Again, you may not have such a problem if you've got a larger monitor. I'm a bit constrained on space so you guys can see. And I'm going to hop into this curve, into edit mode, and move this point here in the x-axis by 0.5. Excellent. I'm going to lift this one up, and now I'm inside the cone, so I'm going to select the cone itself and press the H key to hide it away. So there we go, we've got our rough base going in. There's a couple of things that we're going to have to do here. We're going to have to make sure that it all joins up and there's a slot in the top, and of course I'm nowhere near finished yet. So let's select these two areas here and add in a subdivide, which is going to add another area in the middle, and that'll allow us to control the shape of our curve that little bit better. Not too worried about the shape at the moment. This one here, I'm going to have to pull back. Now, I'm going to have to think of the size of the slots that the rest of the lamp's going to slot into. And whatever it is going to be doubled because we're working on the radius. So, I'm going to be moving that one in the minus x-axis by, let's say, 0.1. So it's a 0.2 across. And let's see how that looks. It might not work, it might. Who knows? This is all about experimentation at this point and playing with our model. So let's grab that, which we have done, and move it in the minus, so x by minus 0.1. Excellent. So if we rotate this round, we should end up with, once it updates, we should end up with a hole in the top. Come back to that in a few moments. Now we're going to have another point, so we're going to select this end one and extrude and pull it across. We saw there was a problem or a delay in its updating there. Don't worry if that happens. I do want to be in front view just in case if you're not in front view when you start doing this, you're going to end up potentially with the curve going off in the Y plane in this case, and we don't want that. Now the position of this, we want it at, so we're going to have to open up this and make sure the local or the global. Local, that's what we do want in this case. The X position is 0.5, I believe. Let's zoom back out. Yes, that's right. We're going to have to change this one here to a vector. That will flatten it out. And probably change this one here, but not both of the handles, just the bottom one, to vector, and that should bring it round so it's got a completely flat base. Now the top here, we've also got a little bit of fiddling to do. It's getting really tight here on my screen, so I'm just going to pull that one back across so you guys can see what's going on. So down here we've got to move it down and in by one. So I'm going to move it down probably, or not move it, sorry, I'm going to extrude from there downwards, and it'll have this horrible curve initially. So let's move that one downwards by about there, and we can alter the settings in here. So the x coordinate is, the local x coordinate is going to be 0.4, because that's 0.5 minus 0.1 that we did earlier. I'm going to go down by at least 0.2 in this case, so 0.2. Excellent. And then I'm going to hit V and go vector there, so that's straight. I'm going to select this bit, select just this handle here, and change that also to vector, and we've got a straight bit going down. And then finally we need to go in, so I'm going to extrude here, and it will remember this time that it is just a vector, which is great, and we're going to move it in so the X is 0.5, the Y is 0.2, and there we go, that's perfect. I'm going to change this handle type again to vector, remain straight, and let's have a look at our lamp base for the moment. I don't want it that tall, by the way. It looks more like a hat at the moment than a base of our lamp. So let's hide some stuff so we can see what's going on. Right, so here we're probably going to have to lift this up, but I don't know for the moment. Let's select all of this geometry here, all of these curves, vertices, and just pull them down. That's a bit better. And there's another point here, this one here. Let's move it about and see if we can get a slightly different shape going on. I would like a little bit of a ridge going around. I don't know why. You know, it's just oh, that's interesting. I thought I'd applied the change and I hadn't. There we go. So let's have a look around our lamp. That's looking pretty good. And we've got a hole in the top for the rest of it. Now that might be a bit big actually for the rest of the lamp. That does look rather large. So I can go here and here, select those two. Oh, individually, that one there, and move them in the x-axis by 0.1. Oh no, not 0.1, I think that will seed it up. Let's move them back. It's going to be half of 0.1, so move it in the x-axis by 0.05. Looks like I didn't have the right thing selected there, so let's just undo all of that. Right, that's going to move it. In fact, I'll do it live here. 0.05, yeah, that does look about right. Undo that and move it in the x-axis by 0.05. There we go. And for some reason it doesn't always update on here, and it's worthwhile remembering that, as that can be incredibly confusing. I've made it smaller, why hasn't it gone any smaller? It's always a good question, but it does seem to catch up the moment you move something else, which is a bit strange. I'm going to undo that change there, and there we go, it's updated. Now I quite like the base of my lamp there, looks pretty sweet, and of course we're going to take it through to the final end as we've been doing. So I'm just going to hide this. Oh, I've just made another 3D view, lovely. So I'm going to hide that away, so we've just got one big view again. Excellent. Let's hop back into perspective mode so we get a better feeling for things, and then, well, let's render it. Let's see what it looks like when we render our image. Why is that going on? Of course. What you will find is if we change the view to camera, it has a different box selected on it. And of course, when we click render, that's what it does. So if we go Control Alt and B and clear that, we see the whole thing will render. And if we go to rendered image, and of course it's rendering our cone. Now why is it rendering our cone? Over in the outliner we have our camera here, which is what we're looking for, and beneath we have our cone. Now it's not visible in the 3D viewport, but it is visible in rendering. So if we turn that off and go back to rendering the image, there we go, we can see our model much better. Of course this is too far out, so we can adjust our camera, etc., but we don't want to do that at the moment. For the moment we literally want to go back to the 3D view. Of course we need to turn on our plane so we can see some stuff. Excellent. And then we can move around, and this scene, because it's now more complex, I'm just going to let it run out now to see how long it's taking. Now we've got some much more geometry in it than just the simple cone we had before. It looks like it's going to take around exactly 14 seconds, 15 and a half seconds it takes to do that basic render. Of course, if we draw that box around it, that we were talking about earlier, it's going to take considerably less time, 3 seconds. So there's a great benefit, even when you're on a reasonably fast computer, to rendering it in that manner. Brilliant. How did you guys get on? I'd love to see your lamp-based designs and how you managed to create it with the Bezier curves there. Please share in the discussions, and I will see you in the next lecture.